Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Dark Domain. Now I know a lot of you these videos to sleep, so before you drift off, I thought it would be a fun idea if everyone could leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also, like and subscribe if you are enjoying the episode. Right? Let's get comfy and relaxed and The dense forest loomed over the small village, a place that had always been both a source of life and quiet dread. Thomas, a man known for his skill in navigating the wild terrain, was the last person anyone expected to vanish. His family, accustomed to his short trips into the forest for firewood, had no reason to worry when he left that morning. But as dusk approached and the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, concern crept into their hearts. He should have been home by now. The villagers formed a search party, armed with torches and the resolve to find him. They ventured into the woods, calling out his name into the darkening expanse. Yet the forest remained unnervingly still. No broken branches, no disturbed undergrowth, not even a footprint marked Thomas's presence. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed him whole, leaving behind only the eerie silence of the cursed woods. Rumors quickly spread through the village, the whispers growing louder with each passing day. They spoke of the forest as something alive, a place that chose its victims, never giving them back. Fear settled deep into the bones of the community as one fact became painfully clear. Thomas was not coming back. The forest had claimed him, as it had others before, and now no one dared to venture too close. Months passed since Thomas vanished, but the forest's shadow still loomed over the village. Fear had settled into the hearts of the people, yet two men, seasoned hunters, bold and skeptical of the growing superstitions, refused to believe that anything otherworldly was responsible. Armed with their rifles, they laughed off the warnings, insisting that no forest could outsmart them. Early one morning, with the mist still clinging to the ground, they ventured into the woods. They had hunted there many times before, and their confidence was unshaken as they disappeared beneath the forest's thick canopy. The villagers watched them go, a heavy sense of unease following them into the trees. Days passed, and neither man returned. Their absence became impossible to ignore. Reluctantly, another search party was organized, though this time the villagers approached the edge of the forest with a palpable sense of dread. They called out the hunters' names, hoping for any sign of life, but the woods gave nothing back. When the searchers came upon the hunter's trail, they found a chilling sight: one of the men's rifles, abandoned near the forest's edge. The weapon lay on the ground, untouched by time or weather, as though it had been placed there deliberately. There were no tracks, no signs of struggle, just silence. The forest had claimed two more victims, and now the villagers were certain. Something dark and malevolent waited within the trees, something that took people and erased all trace of their existence. The hunters, once full of bravado, had vanished like so many before them. Now, even the most fearless among the villagers kept their distance from the forest's boundary, convinced that whatever lurked within would soon come for them as well. The forest had long been the subject of whispered stories, but the recent disappearances breathed new life into the old legends. The elders of the village, who had once dismissed these tales as superstition, now found themselves recalling the eerie warnings of their ancestors. The stories spoke of an ancient spirit, a malevolent force that had always haunted the woods, lying in wait for unsuspecting souls. The spirit was said to have no form, but it was everywhere, within the trees, the wind, even the very ground. It was not simply a ghost, but something far older, something tied to the very heart of the forest itself. The tales told of glowing orbs seen at night, flickering through the trees like distant lanterns, only to vanish when approached. Others claimed they had heard disembodied whispers carried on the wind, indistinct voices that seemed to call out to them, tempting them to step deeper into the forest. Few could remember where these stories had originated. Some believed the forest was cursed by a long-forgotten tragedy. Others thought the spirit was a protector of the land, angered by those who dared to enter. Either way, the message was clear: those who ventured too far into the woods never returned. Jake, a young man with a deep fascination for unsolved mysteries, found himself captivated by these disturbing legends. Unlike the others, who were content to avoid the forest and its secrets, Jake wanted answers. He began to immerse himself in the old stories, speaking with the village elders and poring over any historical records he could find. His research revealed a dark history. The land had been considered sacred by the indigenous people long before the village existed. They, too, spoke of the spirit, though in their tales it was a guardian punishing those who disrespected the forest. Over time, these stories were forgotten by most, but Jake was determined to uncover the truth. He knew there was more to the disappearances than simple superstition, and he was resolved to find out what was really lurking in the depths of the cursed forest. Jake's research into the cursed forest leads him to a chilling discovery. Tucked away in the dusty shelves of the village's old library, he finds a journal that had long been forgotten. The leather cover is cracked and worn, and the pages are yellowed with age, but the words inside are still legible, though unsettling. The journal belonged to a man named Edward Fairbanks, who had lived near the edge of the forest decades ago. It begins, like any other, with mundane details about Edward's life, but as Jake reads further, the tone shifts. Edward writes of strange encounters he experienced near the forest, shadowy figures darting between the trees just beyond the tree line, watching him with unseen eyes. He describes the unsettling sensation of being followed, though no one was ever there when he turned around. The most disturbing entries, however, speak of voices. Edward had begun to hear soft whispers whenever he ventured too close to the forest. The voices were indistinct at first, but over time they became clearer, calling his name, urging him to step into the darkness. He had tried to ignore them, but the pull became stronger with each passing day. The forest seemed to want something from him. In one of the final entries, Edward describes a growing sense of dread. He writes of sleepless nights, plagued by visions of twisted trees and faces emerging from the darkness. In his dreams, he saw the missing villagers, Thomas, the hunters, and others, all lost to the forest, their faces blank and hollow. They seemed trapped, unable to leave, as if the forest itself had consumed them. The last few entries are the most alarming. Edward had made the decision to enter the forest, determined to confront whatever force was haunting him. He was sure that if he could face it, he would be able to free himself from its grip. But the journal ends abruptly after that. No account of what happened next, no resolution, only silence. Edward had vanished just like the others. As Jake closes the journal, a chill runs down his spine. He realizes that Edward's fate may hold the key to the disappearances, but it also serves as a warning. Those who enter the forest seeking answers often do not return. Still, Jake feels more compelled than ever to continue his investigation, even if it means following in Edward's footsteps. Jake's obsession with the forest grows stronger, and with it, an eerie transformation begins to take place in his life. It starts subtly, with strange and unsettling dreams. In these dreams, Jake finds himself standing at the edge of the cursed forest, the towering trees seeming to sway unnaturally in the wind. Shadowy figures, just beyond the tree line, beckon to him. Though their faces are obscured by darkness, Jake senses a familiarity about them, as if they are the spirits of those who disappeared. Their gestures are slow, deliberate, urging him to step deeper into the woods. Each night, the dreams become more vivid and unsettling. In one, Jake hears the unmistakable crunch of leaves underfoot as he walks further into the forest. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and rot. The shadowy figures whisper his name, their voices growing louder with every step he takes. But no matter how far he walks, the edge of the forest never seems to come any closer. The trees close in around him, trapping him in a maze of darkness. He wakes from these dreams drenched in sweat, his heart racing. At first, he brushes them off as mere nightmares brought on by his growing obsession. But soon, the line between dreams and reality begins to blur. During the day, he starts to hear faint whispers, just on the edge of his consciousness. They call his name softly, persistently, always from the direction of the forest. The whispers seem to come from nowhere, but Jake knows where they are leading him. The forest is calling him. Each time he hears the voices, a chill runs down his spine. But there is also a strange comfort in them, as if the forest itself is trying to communicate with him. Despite the growing danger, Jake feels an almost irresistible pull toward the woods. It's as though something deep within the forest is reaching out to him. demanding his presence. He knows the answers to the disappearances lie within, but he also senses that venturing into the forest might mean risking his own life. Still, the calling is impossible to ignore. As the whispers grow louder, Jake finds himself standing at the edge of the forest one evening, gazing into its dark depths. The trees, twisted and foreboding, seem to beckon him forward, their branches moving like skeletal arms. The air around him feels thick, heavy, as if the forest is alive and watching. He feels the weight of the journal in his hand, its words echoing in his mind. He knows what happened to those who went in before him, but despite the warnings, despite the fear that gnaws at his gut, Jake takes a deep breath and steps closer. The forest is waiting. Jake's resolve hardens as he steps past the threshold of the forest, the weight of the journal clutched tightly in his hands. The air inside the woods is different, heavier, as if it holds its breath in anticipation. The thick canopy of trees blocks out most of the remaining light, casting eerie, shifting shadows across the ground. With each step, the forest seems to close in around him, the trees leaning unnaturally close, their twisted branches like skeletal hands reaching out to grab him. His flashlight flickers on, casting a narrow beam of light that barely pierces the thick gloom. As the pale light sweeps across the landscape, Jake notices something unsettling. The forest is completely still. There are no sounds of animals, no rustling of leaves, no wind, only silence. It's as though the forest itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The further Jake ventures, the more oppressive the atmosphere becomes. The whispering voices that haunted him before now seem to come from every direction, swirling around him like the wind. They call his name softly, persistently, urging him deeper into the woods. Each whisper feels like a tug on his soul, pulling him toward an unseen destination. Every step feels heavy, as though the ground is pulling him down, but Jake presses on, his heart pounding in his chest. His instincts scream at him to turn back, to escape while he still can, but the mystery of the disappearances keeps him moving forward. He knows that the answers lie somewhere within the depths of the cursed forest, and he is determined to find them, no matter the cost. As Jake continues deeper, the trees seem to shift and twist in his peripheral vision, as though they are alive, watching his every move. The journal's cryptic entries about shadowy figures and strange lights play on his mind, heightening his sense of dread. He feels the weight of countless eyes on him, but when he turns, there is nothing there, only the endless stretch of dark, silent woods. Suddenly, his flashlight flickers again, and for a brief moment the beam catches something up ahead, a shadow darting between the trees. Jake freezes, his breath catching in his throat. The figure is gone as quickly as it appeared, but he knows it wasn't his imagination. Something, or someone, is out there, watching him. Jake's pulse races as he pushes forward, his flashlight beam sweeping frantically over the trees. The whispers grow louder, almost frantic, as if the forest itself is warning him. But Jake ignores them, his focus locked on the path ahead. Whatever happened to those who disappeared before him, he is determined to face it head-on. There is no turning back now. With each step, Jake feels the forest tightening its grip on him. The trees press closer, the shadows deepen, and the whispers seem to echo inside his very mind. But Jake is undeterred. He knows he's getting closer to the truth, even if it means walking straight into the heart of the darkness that has claimed so many before him. As Jake ventures deeper into the forest, a suffocating coldness begins to seep into the air. The dense fog around him thickens, and the already faint light from his flickering flashlight feels like it's being swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Every step feels heavier than the last, as though the ground beneath him is resisting his movement, trying to pull him back. But the deeper he goes, the clearer the whispers become. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, Jake sees movement, fleeting shadows gliding through the trees, barely visible through the mist. His heart races as he turns his flashlight toward the figures, but they vanish as soon as the light touches them. The oppressive silence of the forest is now broken by the faintest sound, a low moan carried on the wind, as if the forest itself is in mourning. As Jake presses on, the figures reappear, more distinct now, taking the form of ghostly silhouettes. They are the lost souls of those who disappeared, their translucent bodies barely visible against the dark backdrop of the woods. Their eyes are sunken and hollow, their faces twisted in expressions of pure terror. Some seem to be frozen mid-scream, their mouths wide open in silent agony. Others drift aimlessly, their hands outstretched, as though searching for something they can never find. Jake's breath catches in his throat as he realizes what he's seeing. These are the people who vanished without a trace, forever trapped in the forest. Their forms seem to flicker in and out of existence, as if they are caught between the living world and something far darker. The whispers that had haunted Jake since the beginning now grow louder, more insistent. They swirl around him like a rising storm, their fragmented words barely intelligible but filled with desperation and warning. The spirits seem to be trying to communicate with him, their empty eyes following his every move. Jake can feel their fear, their hopelessness, and their longing to escape the eternal prison of the forest. They reach out to him, but there is no touch, only the cold presence of their despair. Despite their warnings, Jake knows that he is on the brink of uncovering the truth. The pull toward the heart of the forest, toward the dark secret that has held these souls captive for generations, is stronger than ever. The lost souls move around him, drifting like shadows in the fog, their tortured expressions never leaving Jake's sight. He begins to understand that the forest is not just cursed. It is alive, feeding on the fear and pain of those who enter its depths. The ancient force that haunts these woods is far more sinister than he had imagined, and the lost souls are bound to it, unable to escape its grasp. Despite the overwhelming fear coursing through him, Jake knows he can't turn back now. The answers are close, closer than they've ever been, but with every step he feels the weight of the forest's darkness pressing down on him, threatening to consume him just as it has consumed those who came before him. As Jake ventures further into the heart of the forest, the atmosphere shifts from eerie to outright oppressive. The trees, once merely ominous, now seem alive, twisting and shifting as if responding to an unseen command. The ground beneath Jake's feet trembles slightly, as though something deep within the earth is stirring. The whispers that once echoed faintly around him now roar in his ears, an overwhelming cacophony that drowns out his own thoughts. With every step, Jake feels the weight of something watching him, something ancient and malevolent, its presence felt in the very air he breathes. He realizes now that this force is not just part of the forest. It is the forest, a dark entity that manipulates everything within its domain. The realization sends a cold shiver down his spine. The path ahead shifts, branches closing in like twisted bony fingers trying to trap him. Jake's heart races as the suffocating energy around him tightens. The forest, he knows now, has claimed many before him, and it won't stop until he's another victim. Jake feels the pull of the force as if he's become part of the forest's dark, twisted game. But there is still a glimmer of hope, a small voice in the back of his mind urging him to keep moving, to find a way out before the forest's grip tightens for good. As Jake ventures deeper into the suffocating, fog-drenched forest, the air grows heavier, and an oppressive presence surrounds him. The trees seem to shift, blocking his path, their gnarled branches closing in like skeletal hands. Every step he takes feels as though the ground trembles beneath him, as if the forest itself is alive, reacting to his intrusion. The whispers now become deafening, overwhelming his mind, making it impossible to think clearly. Jake knows he is no longer alone. An unseen force, something ancient and malevolent, has been watching him all along. Suddenly, through the thick mist, Jake stumbles upon an ancient stone altar, weathered and covered in strange, unreadable symbols. Cold realization washes over him as he understands that the forest is not just haunted, it's cursed. This altar, a relic of forgotten rituals, was used centuries ago to summon and bind a dark, powerful entity to the land. The force that claimed the lives of those who disappeared was this very entity, an ancient spirit that feeds on the souls of those who dare to enter its domain. Jake realizes the disappearances were not random, they were sacrifices, offerings to keep this entity bound to the forest, growing stronger with each lost soul. Now that he has uncovered the forest's darkest secret, the entity has turned its full attention to him. Jake can feel its presence closing in, its hunger palpable. He knows that escape is impossible, but he must find a way to survive, or he will be the next soul claimed by the cursed forest. Jake's heart pounds as he races through the twisting paths of the cursed forest, the unseen force relentlessly closing in. The air is thick with screams, the trees moving as if alive, determined to trap him within their grasp. He recalls a passage from the Forgotten Journal, a ritual that could sever the entity's hold on the forest. With no other option, Jake performs the ritual in a small clearing, invoking ancient words to break the curse. The ground trembles violently, the air crackling with the entity's fury. Just as it seems too late, the oppressive force lifts and Jake stumbles back into the village, shaken but alive. The forest, now eerily silent, still holds its dark secrets. And Jake knows the entity waits, biding its time for another victim.